happens along the way. It only requires your willingness. Are you willing to let go? Well, good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. How are we feeling? Awesome. It's good to be here with all of you. And I want to get right into our series because this message takes us right into what the song has been talking about. And so it'll give us more insight into accepting this idea. Now, thank you, Lavonda, for giving us the synopsis for the series, Well-Being Abounds. Last week in week 1, the topic was a fully formed idea. And really what we were dealing with last week is just to understand a little bit more about what well-being is. As we say, it abounds. We just needed to set some groundwork for this thing called well-being and why we can say it abounds. And a lot of that has to do with this idea of being a fully formed idea. And I talked about the fact that all of us and everything in nature is a fully formed idea, meaning that everything that is required for it or for us to thrive already exists. That's well-being. And I use the example of a seed, right? That we never question that an apple seed has the rain and the sunshine and the soil and even a farmer. It has all the things are already there for it to thrive and become the apple tree that we know it will become. It's the same for you all. And that's what well-being is. As Abraham says, it's just like breathing in air. We only have to allow it. And so the thing is, for most of us in our lives, we're not experiencing well-being simply because we've forgotten or we didn't learn how to allow this thing. We don't have to beg for it. We don't have to get down and roll around the ground and slobber and spit and pray special prayers in order for this thing to come into being. And so last week we highlighted a few of the reasons why we may block well-being, but I want to go deeper into why we may block our well-being and then how we can heal that. And it took me to something that's in Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth. We did a series based on that book earlier this year. And this was a message that, there was only 4 weeks in the month, so I couldn't preach every sermon that Spirit gave to me. So this is the perfect week for it. And in Spiritual Economics, Eric Butterworth writes this: "Of course, you read the papers and are aware of conditions as they are, but it is important to keep a clear perspective of who you are. You are not simply an unthinking reactor to conditions. You are a creative person with your own unique relationship with the divine flow. You are always one with the source of boundless ideas, creativity, and success." Now, when I read that line, you are not simply an unthinking reactor to conditions, I immediately heard, "Shut down the reactors." And what it began to remind me of, it actually reminded me of nuclear reactors. In this country, we use nuclear power, and there are about 100 commercial nuclear power plants here in this country. And we recognize that while nuclear power for energy has been beneficial, it's also highly volatile, right? And there are those that would say that we really shouldn't use nuclear power at all. We know we can power our whole planet with solar power, right? Yes, yes. Shout out to the environmentalists. So we know we don't actually need nuclear power, but we use it. But again, the thing that's interesting about it is that it's very dangerous. And so we've experienced, we've seen nuclear meltdowns that have happened in this country and in other countries, in Japan I'm thinking about particularly. And so we know that there are very adverse effects that can happen, right? From a nuclear meltdown, first people die, right? The other thing that can happen, it causes cancer, and that's not seen until years later. The other thing is that women who may have been exposed to this nuclear meltdown, right? The children may be stillborn. The children may be born with physical defects or mental disorders. All of these things are a result of nuclear meltdowns, and we're pretty familiar with that. We understand, right, that this stuff is dangerous. Even so much so that we see this depicted sometimes in superhero movies. I was reminded of a season on 24, which is a show that I love, where Jack Bauer had to save the world because there was a bad guy who got the nuclear codes, and basically he was going to blow up all the nuclear power plants across the country. And so they had to figure out a way to override it. And so there's just this collective understanding about nuclear reactors, how they can become a problem. And what I began to understand as I was hearing Eric Butterworth saying that we're not unthinking reactors, and I heard in my mind, shut down the reactors, I realized and recognized that then we prevent well-being when we live like reactors. Because just like these nuclear reactors have the potential and the possibility to destroy the physical world, so our internal reactors have the potential and the possibility to destroy our worlds when we are living from a reactionary place, as Eric Butterworth says, an unthinking reactor. Well, then you destroy your world. Things are stillborn in your life. There are miscarriages in your life. There are physical and mental disorders in your life. And so I just encourage you to look at somebody, just say, shut down the reactors. Shut down the reactors. As we recognize that reactors are problematic, as we recognize that reactors can destroy our world, look at somebody else and just say, shut down the reactors. Shut down the reactors. All right. So then the question comes, well, how do we do that? How do we shut down the reactors? Got one word for you. Forgiveness. How do we shut down the reactors? Forgiveness. Now, I love the way life works. I came across a quote that I had never heard from Byron Katie this week, and it was perfect for this message. But Byron Katie says this. She said, "No one can trigger me. Only I can do that." This puts us back in the seat of power, yes. Right? Now, it's interesting to me because I love this idea of being triggered, and, I think it's kind of a, politically correct psycho-spiritual babble that we've learned as spiritual people to say, oh, I'm triggered by that. Right? I'm triggered by what you said. I'm triggered by what you didn't say. I'm triggered by how you said what you said. I'm triggered. And the interesting thing about that, even using that word trigger, reactor, right? It's an example that we actually think that we're a victim. When you remove everything away, because again, it's this nice, Pastor Yolanda and I talk about it sometimes, it's wonderful to see the world that we live in post-Freud and post-Carl Jung, right, where everybody has a lot of this therapist language, right, and we know how to self-analyze now, right, but it's become actually problematic. That's why I say, even to use this to say I'm triggered, it's psycho-spiritual, politically correct babble, right? Because what we're saying in truth is I'm a victim. I don't have any power. The things that you say, the things that you don't say, or the way that you say it have power over me. And if you believe that you're a victim in any place or area of your life, then how can you thrive? How can you believe that you're a victim and then be victorious? Right? We all want to win. We all want to prosper. We all want to thrive. We all believe that we can thrive. We all believe that we have purpose and possibility in our lives. But then we're going out to our partners and saying, you triggered me. The two beliefs can't occupy the same space. And so I recognize then that if this is victim language, this idea of being triggered, this then begins to create in our lives in many, many unwanted ways. Another way to think about this as this idea of you triggered me, you're saying to the person in your life, whether it's your partner, your boss, your children, whoever it may be, right, that your words and your actions are so powerful that ... right? Your words and your actions are so powerful that I can't be at peace because my peace is dependent on you. I can't think straight. Your words and actions are so powerful that I can't think straight because my thinking straight is dependent on you. But again, see, we've adopted this language. It sounds good. I'm triggered. Right? Sometimes that's better than if you used to cuss people out. Right? That's better. That's growth. That's evolution. Beautiful. Right? But here at CSC, we want to encourage you to move on up a little higher. Yes, yes? And recognize the truth that even in that, while it may not be, 100% in victimhood, you still got your toe over there in victimhood. But again, operating against yourself because you want to thrive. I'm looking at your faces. You have visions. You're doing amazing things on the planet. You have desires. You have goals. You have dreams, right? There are things that you want. You can't have even your toe in victimhood and also be a successful in life. You can't, right? And so it means then that in these moments, we've simply lost our sense of well-being. As we say that well-being abounds, when we become a reactor, when we keep them, fully staffed, and everybody's in there making sure things are operating, then we've lost sense of this truth of well-being, because the reason that we can shut down the reactors is because well-being abounds. It's because you're safe. It's because there actually is nothing that can hurt or harm you outside of you in truth. Yes, things happen. Yes, even these bodies are temporary, but you're not your body. We talk about this often, and I think we have to keep coming back to it, right? You're an eternal being. If you want to know more about that, you can go to the Life After Life series that we did earlier this year. So when you limit yourself to an event that happened across your infinite lifetimes, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, do you realize that even if I say you're millions of years old, I'm still limiting you, but let's just use that word because that's a big number, right? You who are millions of years old, an event happened in year 899,000 that lasted for an hour, and that now determines your whole life. But you're a million years old, right? But the truth is you have no age. You're infinite. You're eternal. You got to put it in that perspective and understand this thing, right? And so there's a story that Eric Butterworth tells in Spiritual Economics. And there was a couple from England that wanted to come and visit New York. And they were a little scared. They were a little hesitant because they had heard there was so much crime in New York and all of these bad things that were happening. But they had a friend here in New York. And so what he decided to do, as soon as they got off the plane, he took them into Manhattan and took them up to one of the tallest buildings. The story doesn't say it. I'll say it was at 30 Rock, right? They went to Rockefeller Center to an observatory to get this grand view of the city. And if you've ever been up that high in any of the observatories in our wonderful city, it's amazing. Yes, right? You get to see everything. You can see Central Park, and then you can see all the way down through Midtown, and you can see the Flatiron Building and beyond. It's beautiful. It's amazing, right? And out of that experience, it shifted them, and they had a wonderful time. They actually ended their stay by saying, New York is the loveliest, friendliest city we've ever been to. But they were initially scared. They were initially worried because of all of these reports that they had heard. And so then Eric Butterworth writes this: "It is a powerful insight to live by. Always get the view from the top before you react in negativity to people, conditions, or things. Take a moment to lift up your eyes unto the hills. Contemplate all the changing, challenging experiences from the highest possible point of view. Regardless of the appearances of conflicts or limitations, see all things from the awareness of the allness of life and ever-presence of substance. From the view of the top, you will see things creatively, leading to an attitude that is constructive and optimistic." Your power comes from well-being, and that comes from viewing life from the top, like in this story. When I said earlier, how do we shut down the reactors? It's through forgiveness. Forgiveness is looking at life from the top. That top view is even this idea that I talked about. If you're a million years old, but you're holding on to a story about something that happened for an hour in year 899,000. See, that's the view from the top. Right? As soon as we started to talk about that, I could see all of your eyes. You lifted because it changed your perspective. The event still happened. I'm not saying the event didn't happen. I'm just saying you're not the event. And the event doesn't change everything that's true about you. That's all I'm saying, right? Please, I mean, we're not crazy, right? Right? And we don't live in spookiness, right? We're not saying don't believe that the event didn't happen. I just recognize that the event doesn't change who you are at your core. But you got to know what your core is, well-being. So maybe it's hard for you to believe that because you've never tapped into this core that you are, this eternal self that you are, this beautiful self that you are, this brilliant self that you are, this loving self that you are, this forgiving self that you are, because that's the Christ within you. We talk about Christ consciousness. That's what that is. This is why the example of Jesus forgiving sins is powerful, because it's an example of what you're able to do. There was nothing that could hold him back, even though people lied on him, even though he was incarcerated and he shouldn't have been. All of these things happened, but he powerfully stood in this awareness of forgive them for they know not what they do. And he succeeded, right? He became the Christ. He put off this physical body, which was just a representation of fixed ideas that are holding on to the earth or holding on to limited ideas that you are limited. You get rid of that body and you give birth to the Christ. That's what the symbolism of it is. But you are daughters and sons of God as well. The same power, the same Christ that is within this man we call Jesus is also in you. And so you have this power and possibility to move up to this point of view, to see things differently. Another way to see things differently from this view from the top is you recognize that every act of fear, as A Course in Miracles teaches us, every act of fear is a call for love, right? So then you recognize that then whatever that thing was, maybe that thing that triggered you, what somebody said, what they didn't say, how they acted, or how, the tone of their voice, whatever it is, you recognize that actually it was a call for love because they weren't in their right mind. Their right mind is love. We know how love is and how love acts. Love acts a certain way and it always feels good. You never have to question that. You know when it's love because it just feels good. Yes, yes. So anything other than that, you know that it's not love. And so it's actually a call for love. It's a call for you to move to that highest point of view, to lift your eyes to the hills and begin to give love to that situation because then you can heal it and you can transform it. Why? Because you're the Christ. You're a miracle worker. And so when you recognize that, that's the only way and possibility that forgiveness can happen. Because you recognize that that person wasn't in their right mind, literally. Just as we all have operated from a false story about ourselves or about a situation, and then we said things or we didn't say things, we acted out of sorts. You know you weren't in your right mind in those times, yes, yes? Yes. It's just me? You knew better, didn't you? This is when we say you knew better, right? Sometimes I like to think about the idea that it feels like, for me, it's like I pick up a script, right? Like, scene 1 happens, scene 2, and it's like, okay, now I'm supposed to read this new scene. And we learn it, maybe we learn it through our parents. We definitely learn it from watching too much TV and soap operas, right? How we're supposed to act or react. If a person says this, then I'm supposed to go in like this. Well, but if they don't do that, then I'm supposed to run after them, right? Right? All these different things, right? And we've learned these behaviors. They're not who we are. We've just learned them, right? And we've developed beliefs around them. But I love what Abraham Hicks always teaches us, that one, beliefs aren't fixed. A belief is just a thought you keep thinking. That's all. See, that's the view from the top. Okay, I'm believing something right now. I'm believing that she was supposed to give me a ride. Right? I'm believing that he was supposed to be nice in this situation and kind, but he wasn't. I'm believing that the person, when I was waiting in line, the cashier was supposed to smile and say, have a nice day. I'm believing that, but that's not what happened. And so I recognize that a belief is a thought that I keep thinking. What would happen if I let go of that belief that she was supposed to say bye and have a nice day? Well, then I would be happy. I would be free. Because I'm over here fussing in my mind because of what somebody else didn't do based on what I believe. I don't know what she believes, and I don't even know what was going on in that person's experience. Whatever was distracting that person, I don't even know. And I'm creating this story and putting all of my beliefs on her when I can free myself from my beliefs. Powerful. Powerful. So as we shut down the reactors, and I'm almost done, y'all, it means that then it's time for us, as we recognize that to say I'm triggered, and as Byron Katie so brilliantly says, no one can trigger me, only I can do that, then it's time for us to heal our triggers. Yes, yes? Because that's really, see, even that's the view from the top. Oh, I recognize that I'm triggered. I need to heal this trigger so that I don't pull the trigger and react. Right? So how do we do that? How do we do that? Now, I talked about forgiveness, and again, that sounds nice, right? Now, first of all, we've done 2 powerful series on forgiveness. If you go back to 2013, we did From Pain to Peace, The Path of Forgiveness. September of 2013, that's on YouTube. Last year, we did The Gift of Forgiveness. That's also on YouTube. So you can go back to those series, and between those 8 messages, right, you will learn and understand forgiveness in a new way. But even on a more practical level, radical forgiveness, Colin Tipping, and I'll make sure that we share it out with the mailing list. The radical forgiveness worksheets. This is a powerful tool that guides you through working through your forgiveness, right? And I'm a living witness, and Pastor Yolanda is as well. We've done the work around forgiveness, and it's completely healed and transformed our lives. Completely healed and transformed our lives. And Colin Tipping, in the book Radical Forgiveness, he shares story after story. You think your issue you can't forgive? You ain't seen some stories till you see the stories in that book, right? Or even as we think about, we have actually, all of these books are on our website. There's a listing for books on forgiveness. And so if you look at the story of Corrie ten Boom, who's a Holocaust survivor and was able to forgive, right? Literally forgive the guards, right? Or Immaculée Ilbagiza, who was in the Rwandan genocide and was able to forgive the people who with machetes chopped the heads off of her family. Just perspective, right? If you think you can't forgive, right? Something your mama said or didn't say or didn't do, or you felt neglected. I'm not minimizing what happened, but I'm recognizing that anything can be forgiven. That's the only point I'm making. Anything can be forgiven. And again, I'm a living witness. Pastor Yolanda's a living witness. Come talk to us about it. We can tell you some things, right? Because as we're human, as we've been on this planet, there's some things that need to be forgiven, right? And that's beautiful, because out of those experiences, we found our power. Out of those experiences, we found out we were free all the time. Out of those experiences, we found out and now live from this place of knowing that we're eternal. Those experiences were the very thing that led us to our point of power. So radical forgiveness, we have those 2 message series. And then the other thing is, how do we heal our triggers? Well, I recognize that we got to keep dipping back into the stream of well-being. And the 2 ways that I know to do this, if you know another way, please tell me. Affirmative prayer and through meditation. Now, we say here at CSC that in worship we celebrate God, in prayer we know God, in meditation we contact God, and in living we activate God. Now, I could say it another way, because we don't have to use the word God. God is just a placeholder, right? I can say in worship we celebrate well-being. In prayer we know well-being. In meditation we contact well-being, and in living we activate well-being. And so what I recognize and what I know to be true then is that prayer and that knowing, that prayer and that meditation, prayer is knowing God. We don't beg, we don't beseech, we don't get down on our knees begging some big all-powerful thing to give something to us. We recognize, we know that we are one with it, and it's out of that knowing we speak the truth. That's what affirmative prayer is. What meditation is contacting that thing, that the all that is, that divine being that lives within you. Through meditation, you come back in touch with it. Because if you never get in touch with it, how could you know that you're one with it? That's why those 2 things are critically important. And then in living, we activate God. Because again, and I think I said it last week, that meditation is for our life outside of meditation. Just like we shower for our life outside of showering, right? Showering is wonderful, and you can spend a good time or spend time in the bath, and you have your candles and rose petals, do whatever you want. It's a wonderful time, but really all of that moment is about your life outside of it, so you can be fresh and clean out in the world. Meditation is the same way. We meditate, we contact this well of well-being. We contact well-being itself, so that out in the world, that's how we heal the triggers. Because as you begin to contact that place on a daily basis, all of a sudden, the scenario I use, okay, the cashier doesn't smile and say, have a nice day. Your immediate reaction is, I don't know what's going on with her. I send her love, right? See, because you've been in touch with that stream of well-being. You're living from that view of the top. That's what's possible for all of us. That your daily felt lived experience is you're viewing the world from the top at all times. And so you're no longer triggered. Or even when the trigger is about to come up, you're so aware of it, you now recognize that I'm not controlled by the trigger. I control the trigger and I tell it to stand down. That's the difference. And so our opportunity now is to put this into practice. And I invite you to find something that may feel challenging but may not be the most challenging, right? And that can look a bunch of ways. Personally, you can look at your life in that way, but also now is probably not the time for you to figure out how to forgive Donald Trump. That's probably a little too big, right? Or the US government, right? Right? Or the perpetrators behind enslaving Africans, right? Now is not the time for that, right? Those are all things that we need to bring forgiveness work to. Yes, yes. But see, what we do so often, you hear these words and it sounds good and immediately your mind goes to, well, what about the slave trade, Pastor Greg? Oh, well, what about the Holocaust, Pastor Greg? Oh, well, what about police brutality in this country? Meanwhile, you got a broken relationship with your mother that you can heal right now. Start there, because I guarantee when you learn how to forgive from that place, when you learn how to forgive your spouse, your partner, your brother, your sister, your mother, your boss, the person at the store, you will then understand the principle and then you can apply it to these other questions. But not until you've learned it in your own life. Not until you've healed some things in your personal life. That's why you can't wrap your mind around it. That's why you can't understand it yet, because you haven't practiced it. You haven't tried it out with the person at the store. And that's how you make this thing easy and effortless. And so with that, I invite everybody to stand. I let go of the shame. I let go of the blame. There is no one to blame. Mother, Father, God, we stand here recognizing that there is one mind, one power, one presence, one peace, one ease, one joy, one freedom, one love that we call God. And we recognize that we are one with it. We recognize that we were created from it. We recognize that we are thoughts from its mind. We recognize that we are fully formed ideas from its mind. As we recognize that truth, as we recognize that oneness, as we recognize that unity, we recognize that we are safe. We recognize that we are not the events that happen in our lives. We are the experiencers and the observers of those events, and we have the power, potential, and possibility to interpret those events against ourselves or in our favor. In this moment, we forgive ourselves for each and every time that we interpreted those events in ways that didn't serve us, in ways that put us in the place of victim, in ways that put us in the place of no power. We forgive ourselves and we let ourselves go now. And so it is out of this freedom that we dissolve the triggers. It is so out of this awareness of our freedom that we shut down the reactors. We thank everyone who worked in our nuclear power plants for their time. We give them a severance package and we say goodbye. We shut down the reactors. And as we shut down the reactors, we are lifted up. We are lifted up to this brand new point of view in life. We can see the whole city, which is our life. We can get a new perspective on our lives, and we see and feel and know the stream of well-being that is always flowing to us. We recognize now that it is out of our allowing of this thing, that it will flow to us in magnificent and powerful ways. We recognize that from this higher place, from lifting our eyes up to the hills, that we can see a grander, glorious picture, even for the dreams, visions, and goals that we had, because we recognized as we were living down there in the reactors, we were thinking small. But now as we have shut down the reactors, now as we have dissolved the triggers, we can see even more possibility for our lives. From this place, we recognize that we were bigger than we thought. From this place, we recognize we are more gifted than we thought. From this place, we recognize that there is even more purpose for our lives than we thought. And so we open our arms up wide and we say yes to it. We say yes to it all. We say yes to dreams fulfilled. We say yes to goals accomplished. We say yes to new levels of success, new experiences of success. We say yes to our prosperity. We say yes to thriving, because from this vantage point, all things are possible and nothing is against us. We are powerful, creative beings. And we let this divine flow in, through, and as our lives. Mother, Father God, I am grateful and thankful for these beautiful, precious souls that are here in this space and will hear this message within the sound of my voice. Because each and every one of these beautiful souls are examples for this planet, are examples for all of our brothers and sisters of the possibility of transformation, of the possibility that comes out of forgiveness, the possibility that comes out of healing our triggers. And by their very lives, just as we talk about others, Corrie ten Boom and Immaculée Bogiza, just as their lives have impacted us and inspired us, so each and every person in this room will be the inspirers for their families, will be the inspirers at their workplace, will be the inspirers with those that they work with. And just as a lighthouse does, each of you will point the way back to absolute freedom, absolute joy, and absolute prosperity. I release this word with expectation because I know that the word that I speak, it comes back to me, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. So I am looking for the bounty of this prayer to come forth easily and effortlessly. And so it is with gratitude and thanksgiving that I release this word, and together we say amen, amen. Ashe. And so it is. And so it is. Thank you, God.